The J-Blades has been charged with ruling and coercing his ex-wife. There was a time when his soft voice made everyone cry over old teddy bears and dusty family heirlooms. J-Blades did more than just host TV shows. He was holding stories, families, and memories that had been lost together. But fame can be heavy, especially if you're hurting behind the scenes. This is the story of a man who got better by fixing things that were broken. Behind the barn doors, his own life was falling apart. Things aren't going well for Jay Blair after a period of quiet success. From a broken home to a well-liked host, Jay Blade's early life is like a story of being able to survive because it is full of hard times. He was born in Hackney, East London in 1970, a long way from the bright lights of TV sets. His life began to fall apart early on. Jay's father left when he was very young, leaving behind not only his family but also, as Jay would later learn, more than 20 children spread out in different relationships. Being away from them weighed more than just physically. It was mental and emotional, and Jay had to find his way through a jumble of confusion, poverty, and a broken sense of who he was. Since Jay grew up in public housing and was exposed to the harsh realities of poverty, his world was one where silence often ruled over talk. It's the kind of silence that comes from struggle and pain that can't be spoke. In later years, he talked about his childhood as one of pain and confusion, which perfectly describes how hard it was to grow up without any direction or recognition. In this setting, school wasn't a safe place to be. For many years when he was young, Jay couldn't read or write. It took years for the real reason to become clear. It wasn't until he was in his 30s that he was told he had dyslexia. In the meantime, his teachers and friends thought he was being lazy or defiant because he was having trouble. It didn't work for him. He dropped out of school without any credentials and was given the false label of failure. But Jay's hands held something strong inside them, hands that were naturally skilled and eager to make, fix, and build. But because they didn't know what to do, those hands first worked in workshops and then as security guards. Even though it was a humble road, each step built something else. In the end, those hands found their true calling in restoring furniture. The way this choice fit together was almost magical. Jay carefully fixed up broken, thrown away things, giving value and beauty to things that other people thought were worthless. In many ways, he was fixing himself as well as the things he was working on. He was giving back a second chance and a new reason for living that the world had taken away from him. How repair shops grew. Before Jay became famous, he wasn't famous overnight or because of a slick TV ad. Instead, it was people in his neighborhood who first saw the spark in him. He helped start Out of the Dark in 2013 as a charity whose goal is to teach poor kids how to fix up old furniture. Making things wasn't the only thing at stake. It was about fixing cuts that you can't see. Jay didn't just teach kids how to sand wood or refinish surfaces in those classes. He helped them remember how valuable and important they were. The workshop turned into a safe place where broken things and lives could be fixed. The BBC became interested in his work after word got out beyond the group. By 2017, Jay Blades became the center of attention as the repair shop's lifeblood. The show was a quiet protest against the loud, shocking TV that was popular at the time. It was filmed in a cute barn in the English countryside of West Sussex. The repair shop didn't have any fights or competition. Instead, it honored restoring furniture, memories, and love that had been passed down through generations. It wasn't like most presenters that Jay was. He listened carefully, making room for people to talk about their sadness and happiness. He did not practice what he said when he spoke. The words were honest and came straight from the heart. People came to think of warmth and hope in his flat cap and warm smile. Because he brought so much feeling to the workshop, the show was about more than just fixing things. It was about making hearts whole again. As the show got more popular, it became a well-liked character not just in Britain but all over the world. By 2021, The Repair Shop was one of the most watched reality shows on British TV, appealing to viewers who wanted to see something real and kind. In a media world that is often defined by the surface, Jay's story and the show's message were a bomb, showing that everyone needs healing in some form. The person who smiled. Behind that friendly, warm smile was a man who felt a lot like someone you already knew, friendly, welcoming, and yet quietly amazing. Jay Blades was more than just a TV star and an expert in her field. He gave a lot of people hope and helped them change because they saw themselves in him and their difficulties and dreams. His story touched a lot of people because it wasn't one of easy success or polished luxury. It was real, honest, and deeply human. Jay is from the working-class streets of Hackney, East London. This isn't usually thought of as a place where famous people come from. He didn't have a fancy accent or go to a fancy school. All he had was grit, determination, and a natural gift for making things. His rise from a boy with dyslexia and a hard life to a beloved national hero was so amazing that it had to be told. That's why Making It, his book, was such a huge hit. It wasn't just a biography, it was a story of hope and strength. The pages were honest about his problems, like how poor he was as a child, how he found out he had dyslexia late in life, and how he found comfort and purpose in fixing up old furniture. People not only bought the book, but also felt like they knew the author. He was more than just an artist. He also spoke out for mental health. It used to be that celebs didn't talk about things like depression, racism, or not being able to read or write, but Jay did. He was honest about his flaws in a way that was pleasant and not often seen in public. He didn't just talk about getting ahead. He talked about suffering, pain, and how messy healing can be. He said in an interview that mental health isn't a goal. The road isn't always straight up, but it's always a trip. Brands were interested in working with him because he was honest, which caught their attention. He was asked to talk at schools so that his story could inspire the next generation. Even the British royal family paid attention, which shows that he had an effect beyond TV sets. Jay was given an MBE in 2021 for his work in the community and in art. An official thank you for how much his skills and courage had changed people's lives. But behind all the bright lights, fame started to show its darker side. Even though the smile was real, it started to hide something weaker. The man who had brought so much hope and strength to the world was quietly dealing with dark sides he wasn't ready to fully show yet. The base is broken. By 2022, Jay's carefully crafted public image began to show signs of wear. People who paid close attention to his work noticed a change. The eager host who used to be on time started showing up late to interviews or not at all sometimes. Public speaking engagements were either missed or suddenly canceled. When he did show up, he seemed to have less energy and he smiled less often. His eyes often showed a tiredness that words couldn't fully describe. Friends and coworkers talked about a change that was slight but clear. Jay himself tried to make it go away by using words that are so popular these days because people are so tired. To Mew. These answers didn't quite get to the heart of what was going on below the surface, though. Jay talked about some of his problems for the first time in an interview with The Independent. He said quietly, "Some days I feel like I'm made of glass. People think I'm strong." People had come to respect him as a confident man, but his voice had a tremor of weakness in it. He was honest about how he felt like a fake in his own success story. He said that despite all the praise and admiration, he sometimes wondered if he really belonged in the spotlight. It was too loud, too quick, and too late for him to enjoy success, he thought. And the man who helps other people get back on their feet was quietly falling apart. Things were getting tense behind the scenes. It was quiet in the repair shop as people talked about missed shots and times when Jay's normal warmth turned into anger or exhaustion. There wasn't a scandal or a public breakdown. There were just small signs that he was under a lot of stress and having a hard time balancing his public image with his real life, which felt more and more apart. People who had worked with Jay for years talked about times when his usually calm personality broke. "Jay has been a rock for many," said one producer. "But, rocks can break down." Others talked about short absences that weren't explained or feeling tired that didn't go away when the cameras stopped running. Even though people were talking, Jay was still determined to keep going. People still saw the smile and thought they knew the man, a person who had turned trouble into hope. But on the inside, a crack was appearing that was threatening the base of everything he had built. There is trouble behind the camera. The year 2023 was a turning point that not many people saw coming, but it seemed like it had to happen in the end. The BBC quietly old people about changes at the repair shop. Jay would still be the show and people would still love seeing him, but his screen time would be changed. And at first glance, it sounded like a normal change to the production process. In public, the network said it was a way to change the show's flow, bring in new ideas, and reach more people. But people who knew what was going on behind closed doors thought it was something much more planned, an attempt to slowly fire Jay without firing him directly, which would be messy. A lot of rumors spread quickly. There were rumors that Jay and the producers didn't get along. A growing fight over artistic control was seen by people close to the production. Jay had always worked to keep the show real and based on real craftsmanship. He didn't want it to become more sensational, glossy, or TV-friendly. One person who knew him said that he wanted it to be real, a place where stories and healing could come together. The producers, on the other hand, wanted the show to have a tone that would appeal to a bigger, maybe younger audience and have more drama. There was more to this tug of war than just TV time. It was about what made the show special. Jay fought back hard and wouldn't give up on his beliefs, but as it often does in fights of ideas, power slowly changed hands. The reins were tighter and the cuts got more precise. Moments that used to show off Jay's kind and gentle way of working with people were cut down or replaced with faster, flashier cuts. It was a small, almost unnoticeable detail. At the same time, the newspapers reported that Jay had left the public eye. Reports started to get out. He wasn't going to charity events, skipping appearances, and worst of all, disappearing during important production times is a big problem. His public image had been known for being friendly and easy to get in touch with, so this sudden pullback was shocking. People who worked with him saw a change in him, not just in his body, but also in his heart. The man who used to listen, make time for everyone. The word that was floating in the air was scary, like the light that had drawn people to Jay was going out. The stress at home. Jay's private life has always been a quieter one, away from the cameras and the attention of the public. It was known but never fully revealed. When Jay married Lisa in 2022, it seemed like a fresh start. When they were out in public, like when they smiled at events or shared pictures of quiet vacations, it looked like they were building something strong. But behind the scenes, things were in a lot more danger. By the next year, it was clear that they were no longer together. At first, it looked like an old and sad story. Jay had been noticeably absent from public life and social media. He was also less present on set and, according to some coworkers, harder to reach. Fans thought it was because they were tired or because they had a lot on their plate. In private, people talked about someone who was busy, distant, and not the same steady presence they used to know. At first, there wasn't a clear reason. There were only small signs that something was changing. There was no wedding ring. Lisa became less important, and when her name came up, the love that had been around it seemed to go away. Then the news came out. First he was quiet, then he confirmed it wasn't just a matter of two people growing apart or making a personal choice. There were now serious claims against Jay about how he behaved during the relationship. His denials of the claims would lead to a court case that is still going on. It was a big change for someone who had been seen as a calm and healing force for a long time. The man who helped other people fix things that were broken was now having to face a reality in his own life that couldn't be fixed in the workshop or patched up. And as the court case went on, a new truth came to light. Things that were going on behind the calm and charm were starting to come to the surface. The turn of events felt like a sad echo of the past for people who had been following Jay's story. He has been open about his time in East London as a young man, saying that he had to leave because he was getting into too many fights. He once said, "I had a temper," adding that violence had become a way for him to stay alive. He had worked hard to get rid of that part of himself. But when things got tough, those traits seemed to come back. Even though Jay's situation didn't look good, this wasn't the first time that a broken relationship had pushed him to the edge. Years ago, Jay was homeless and carrying all of his things in a trash bag after the end of a long-term relationship and the failure of his community project. He said that personally, financially, and mentally, everything fell apart during that time. Afterward, he said, "I felt broken. I lost everything I had worked for." He was close to committing suicide at one point, which he now says was the time that made him decide to get help and start over with his life. In this case, though, things were different. The separation was closely watched by the public and had judicial repercussions. Jay stopped being seen by the public. He stopped putting on his wedding band. His online activity, which used to be regular, went away. It was a very personal fall for a man who made a name for himself by fixing things that other people had almost lost. It couldn't be fixed in front of the cameras. By the middle of 2024, things were getting rough for the BBC. Years of budget cuts had made it harder for departments to pay their bills, and the company was under more and more pressure to modernize and reduce. Its power was being questioned from all sides at the same time. Streaming giants, digital-first platforms, and niche broadcasters were taking viewers away, which was splintering the media scene and making it hard for the BBC to find a balance. Tradition and staying alive. There were interna